China's local debt crisis is no less than walking through a minefield blindfolded. With 70% of the local government standing on the edge of default, Beijing has got a storm on its hands. What led China, the world's second largest economy, to this Mount Everest of debt? Why are local governments bearing the brunt of Beijing's policies? Is there a way out? Stay tuned to find out. China is dealing with a serious financial conundrum, and it's no less than an economic minefield waiting to explode. After 3 long years of battling the pandemic and facing a real estate crash, local governments in the country are left high and dry, struggling with mountains of debt. Stating the situation worrisome is a dire understatement. Analysts have estimated that China's outstanding government debts skyrocketed to 123 trillion yuan, give or take $18 trillion in 2022. And here's the kicker. Nearly $10 trillion of that debt is what they call hidden debt. It's owed by risky local government financing platforms that cities or provinces have backed. Yikes! That's no less than stepping into a financial abyss. Now, as the pressure mounts, regional governments are resorting to desperate measures. They're slashing wages, cutting transportation services, and even reducing fuel subsidies in the middle of a harsh winter. The consequences of these financial woes are hitting the people hard. Take the northern province of Hebei, for example. In November and December, thousands of people had a tough time heating their homes because there was a shortage of natural gas. And you know what? The blame game begins. The cuts in government subsidies played a part, or so the state-owned news site Bejiing reported. And that's true for all across the local governments. So why are these local governments struggling so much? Well, they've pretty much emptied their piggy banks by pouring massive amounts of money into enforcing frequent COVID lockdowns, conducting mass testing, and setting up quarantine centers. It was all part of their game plan until December 2021 came along, and suddenly there was a policy U-turn. Xi Jinping's zero-COVID policy had an abrupt end, leaving local governments high and dry. According to Craig Singleton, a senior fellow for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, Beijing is facing an economic minefield of its own making. This debt crisis is the perfect storm from LFGV, fueling it with 70% of the local governments on the brink of bankruptcy. With the hidden debt surpassing $9 trillion and still growing, the road to economic revival is becoming increasingly arduous. As the burden of debt continues to escalate, local governments are putting pressure on banks to extend loan maturities and reduce interest rates. Sources reveal that local government financing vehicles have 5.5 trillion yuan, which is $790 billion, of onshore bonds maturing in 2023, marking the highest level since 2021, as reported by Fitch. Andrew Collier, the managing director at Orient Capital Research, aptly describes LGFVs as the black hole of the Chinese financial system. These entities have been utilized to bridge the gap between local government revenue and expenditures, yet they often lack profitability and struggle to repay their debts. Collier predicts that many LGFVs will either collapse or be quietly recapitalized by banks, thereby exposing rural banks and bondholders to the risk of defaults. The decline in revenue from land sales, which is a crucial source of income for local governments, coupled with limited options to generate fresh funds, has raised concerns about the ability of LGFVs to meet their debt obligations. This, in turn, has implications for the broader banking sector and financial markets. The capacity of financially strained local governments to follow through on spending plans will also serve as a critical test for China's modest economic growth target of approximately 5% for the year. LGFVs play a pivotal role in financing infrastructure projects, which have traditionally been one of the primary drivers of growth in the world's second largest economy. However, the picture couldn't be much far from theory. China's local government financing vehicles are swimming in debt, and it's reaching mind-boggling levels. Brace yourself for this number, a record-breaking 66 trillion yuan. Yep, that's half of China's entire economy. The International Monetary Fund spilled the beans in a recent report, and it's got everyone on edge. Now, you might be wondering why this debt debacle is causing a stir. Well, it's happening at a time when the Chinese government is desperately trying to lift the economy out of a property debt crisis. You know, the kind that led to developers defaulting left and right, and land sale revenues taking a nosedive. To counter the chaos, Beijing had to whip out a bunch of supportive measures. However, LGFVs are feeling the heat when it comes to repaying their debts. After all, their income is tightly linked to real estate and land sales. Wang Tao, the chief China economist at UBS, summed it up nicely when she said LGFVs are under considerable pressure on debt repayment this year. Can't blame them when their financial well-being depends on the ups and downs of the property market. Now, Chinese banks that have been lending to these LGFVs are starting to receive some interesting requests. We're talking about pleas to extend the maturities of their loans by up to 6 months and reduce interest rates. Yep, it seems the borrowers are hoping for a little wiggle room. To make matters even more intriguing, Chinese banks and other financial institutions have become quite cautious about lending to LGFVs in recent years. They are thinking twice before handing out money. Some state-owned banks, asset managers, and insurers have even been going through their portfolios with a fine-tooth comb. They are searching for LGFV borrowers with weaker credit worthiness and looking to dispose of them. Talk about some spring cleaning in the financial sector. But wait, there's more. When faced with stricter credit criteria at home, these LGFVs decided to dip their toes into offshore markets. They went all out and raised an eye-popping $39.5 billion through dollar bonds in 2022. Apparently, the offshore branches of Chinese financial institutions were big-time buyers of these bonds. However, authorities caught wind of the LGFV's dollar bond spree and decided it was time to turn up the heat on scrutiny. The National Development and Reform Commission wasn't too keen on approving requests from units with lower credit ratings. It's all part of their grand plan to keep a lid on financial sector risks. You've got to hand it to them for cracking down when necessary. LGFVs aside, the fallout of the debt crisis is being hard felt by the citizens. With the aftermath of the crisis looming over the country, all the provinces, regions, and municipalities are on a mission to boost their economies and retain their talented folks. Premier Li Qiang set a target of creating 12 million jobs, and local governments are taking up the challenge by ramping up their hiring spree, resulting in a massive 190,000 new recruits. It's like a recruitment marathon out there. Right now, a staggering 18% of the population, aged 16 to 24, is unemployed, and over 11.5 million fresh-faced graduates are about to hit the job market. Now, let's talk about real estate, one of China's biggest players. The famous Country Garden Holding, considered a mammoth in the property development game, reported a net loss of over $1 billion in 2022. As you could imagine, the real estate sector is a big deal, accounting for more than a quarter of China's GDP. With mounting pressure to avoid loan defaults, developers are scrambling to change their strategies. They're cutting costs left and right, which often means saying sayonara to projects. And that's not all. There's more fallout from this crisis. China has got some unhappy campers, the retirees, and those in need of medical benefits. The government's plan to raise the retirement age and reduce medical benefits has sparked protest across the nation. Yep, people are taking to the streets, and guess who's leading the charge? The elderly. They're not too thrilled about being cut off from their benefits, and the younger generation is joining the protests too. Why? Well, they're worried that as people retire, there will be fewer job openings for them. With no sector being spared, the insurance sector has taken a serious hit due to the economic slowdown and the property crisis. With people's incomes dwindling and household spending dropping, the insurance industry is feeling the pinch. Big players like China Life are now focusing on transforming their high-performing agents into specialized digital teams. The harsh reality is, everyone's trying to navigate this post-COVID economy, and let us tell you, it is not an easy road for China. Do you think Beijing will bail out the defaulting local government? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated.